Yeah, start the recording.
Okay, we got it. Okay, today we on a continuation, and Manoj and Victor, since we are just a small group, if you guys have any not doubts, I would like to have like an interaction, and it'll be nice if they interact when we are doing the presentation. That makes it more interesting, and it's not a debate. We can bring out something. It's not that necessary. I know everything. There may be some things which may be new. So be free to jump in. Okay. Hey, hi, Matthew. Matthew, you can hear me? Okay, it's fine. I think Matthew can hear me. Now, this is in continuation to what we had done from the start. I think most of who are here has seen from the start of the flood. I started it from the flood. The purpose of my Banyan Wine, the book which I will be writing later on, is to show that we are all basically descendants from Noah and his children. Today, all the gods which we have today, all the gods throughout the world, are either a story of Noah's children or they are his direct stories of his children during the time when they were alive, basically. Today, we have taken the topic of Assur. Assur was the son of Shem, and he comes from the line of Shem, basically. So he believed in the one God, the Almighty God who saved them from the flood. So he comes from that holy line. Shem is known as the holy line, basically. And here in this picture, I just put artificial intelligence picture showing this is not Assur, this is actually Zoroaster. And I will explain that who's Zoroaster. Zoroaster is not Assur, but this is the baseline for the religion which we call today Zoroastrians. And below that word, I put a disclaimer because this presentation will be seen not only by us, by some people later on. And I just want to make this clear that this is only for educational purpose and not to hurt any sentimental feelings of any religion. And here we have the basically the sign of Assur, basically, but this is a modified version of the symbol. This is when the religion became Zoroastrians, but the initial image is of Assur. Assur was called Asura Mazda. But when Zoroastrianism came in, there are two things here. Assur was very long back. He was in the 2300 BC. The religion Zoroastrianism came only after 600 BC. So there's a whole gap before that. The older people who worshipped Assur were the Sumerians, and the people who became Zoroastrians were the Iranians, basically. So they were offshoot of the Sumerians because it's that part of the world which we call Ur and all that, from where Abraham came, and that part is Mesopotamia. So basically it's connected, but I just want to make the difference here. Let me go to the next slide. Oh, I got a... Okay. These are some of the images of Assur. And here I show the Assur, basically the initial image. This is in Sumerian times. And you see here Assur was the deity who vanquished Tiamat. There are a lot of stories about how he was. But basically Assur was a god of the war. He was called god of war. And he was worshipped in Assyria, what we call the Akkadian kingdom. He was also he was the main god for Ashurbanipal, what do you call this? Is the Sumerian king. You can see him on the king's list. Now, the king's list is the tablet which is there in the British Museum. It gives you all the list of the kings after the flood. I don't know if anyone knows that history. There's a king's list which details all the kings' name right from Adam to the flood and after the flood. The first king after the flood mentioned in that tablet is Kush. He's called Kish there, Kish, who set up the kingdom of Kish. So these are not fairy tales, these are in the tablets, basically. Here on the right side, I have shown a picture of Ashur. Ashur was also known with different names. He was also called sometime Marduk, sometime he was called the son of Marduk. But in those times, people called with different names. You see, today you go to southern India, they have names for Kartika with a different name. The northerners will call it different. So the gods had different names here. Here I just show basically a table, and just to make sure so that I know I did all my presentation, but just a brush up. You have Noah here, you have Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ashur comes from the line of Shem, as Shem had four sons. He had Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Jesus comes from Arphaxad, basically from this line. Jesus comes from this line. Ashur is here. So basically, he's the son of Shem. And in the years after the flood, he left the land of Shinar. Shinar is the place where it was at the base of the Mount Ararat, which you call Ararat. They used to call it Urarat. That's why you call it Ur. And built Nineveh. Nineveh is supposed to be the Sumerian name for Babylon. Babylon is today Baghdad. Iran and other important cities. He went on to Assyria and built Nineveh and Rehoboth and Kalan and Resen and Nineveh. These are all mentioned in the Bible. From that land, he went forth into Assyria and built Nineveh and Rehoboth and between so and so thing. Here it says Ashur, god of Assyria. He was a god which you say Assyria is today the land of Syria. He was called Ahura Mazda, that means the divine one, the master. And I will tell you how this Ahura and Ashura and these things come later on into our Vedic terms, into the Hindu terms, but I'll not confuse you right now. Here I have a brief explanation of what the Assyrian history related to Noah. Like I said, Ashur was the son of Shem. He had the city of Ashur. And the word, it is interesting to note that the word Aryan, which is so fascinated Adolf Hitler, is a form of the word Iran or Iran, E-R-A-N. Basically, the older name is E-R-A-N, Iran. The word Iran comes from this. Hitler wanted to produce a pure Aryan race of supermen, but the very term Aryan signified a mixed line of Shemites and the Japhites. That means this people who were called the Iran people, they were a mix of Shem's children and Japheth's children. That's why they called them the Semites and the Japhethites. Ashur was also known with various names at that time, Marduk, Dimruta, etc. So this is just a picture. On the right side, you see this is a picture of Ashur. And this is Angremanyu. He is the devil, basically, in Sumerian. In Zoroastrian, they call it Angremanyu, but he was called Ninruta in the olden Sumerian culture, basically. He represents the devil. That's how you see the devil with the teeth, the fangs, the horns, and all that. These all later on 16th century paintings all showed Lucifer with horns and all that. That's all the inclination from these paintings, how they got it, basically. And here I have some verses from the Bible, basically from Genesis. You have many, Ashur's name comes many times in the Bible. Ashur as the west bank of the Tigris. You have Ashur, the son of Shem, the sibling Elam, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Ashur built Nineveh, the city of Rehoboth. This is all from Genesis 10. Genesis 25 also mentions Eruz at the border for the location of settlement of Ishmael's descendants in the area of Havilah to Shur, where they lived in aggression towards all the tribes related. Havilah is a place which today is called Sinai in Egypt. That part of the world was called Havilah in those days. I wouldn't go through all this. I'm just, whoever wants the presentation, I'm due to, but this is the, basically I mentioned here how many times it is Ashur is mentioned in the Bible. And here he says Ashur as a king of the Assyrian gods. Here again, I show Ashur in different forms. In the Hebrew language, the word for Assyria was also Assur. It is interesting to note that the word Aryan, which was so fascinating, which I said before, Hitler wanted to produce a pure Aryan race of Superman, but the very term Aryan mixed it. And here you see, I don't know if you have seen in the shopping centers, there is a buttermilk which we call Aryan.
I think that's the Arabic name, right? For the
Yeah, it's an Arabic name for Iran, Aryan.
button.
Yeah, so you have seen this drink in the
Yeah,
shops.
like all Middle Eastern store they have that. Yeah.
Yes, Aryan. It's called Aryan. So the word Aryan is not an Indian word. We Indians we take it for granted that Aryan comes from Hitler copied Aryan was our word. Hitler didn't copy Indians. He hated Indians. He considered Indians as the lowest class. He took it from the Iranians basically because he knew they were a mix of Shemites and the Japhites. We Indians were always called the pagans, basically. So, if any Indian tells you that Adolf Hitler copied Aryan from India, they don't know history.
But Glady, when they say that India was invaded by Aryan in the north, are they referring to the same Aryan what they're talking here?
Yes,
It's
that's a very interesting question, and I'll come back to that when I am discussing the chapter of Hinduism, how it was all copied, who were the Brahmins, how did they come, what were the Brahmins' real religion, and that's a very interesting history to know, because India is an amalgamation of many people. Remember, India was ruled by the Greeks. We have Greek cultures today. You know how many Maharashtrian Brahmins. If you see the Peshwas, their writings were all Brahmi. Brahmi is very closely related to Aramic. So they were the Greeks basically. That's why you see the Peshwa Brahmins in Maharashtra are very fair people, whereas the other Brahmins are very dark. So that I history I'll come to know. I'll tell you when we come to the history of Hinduism, how Hinduism came, and I'm covering a little bit in this also, how they took things from here. So you will come to know when I come to the ending, basically. So I'm coming to the Zoroastrian part now. That part was Assur in when he was in during the Sumerian times. Let's come back to the 600 BC when the religion of Zoroastrians started. In history, they are called Parsis. The word Parsis come from the Persian language, basically. It's called it is a basically a mixed name of like Farsis. Farsi was their language basically. So the misspelling of the word changed from generation to generation, and the Farsis became Parsis basically. They brought with them their religion basically. The Farsi people. See, I've written the Parsis or the Farsi people. The P was not there actually. In the Mediterranean world, P is not pronounced. That's why you will see all Arabs taking, I'll give you a visa. Instead of pizza, they can't spell P. They'll say, get me a visa, they'll say. Because the word P is very silent in that part of the world. According to the Kissa-e-Sajan, now Kissa means, in Urdu, they say Kissa means story. There's a book called Kissa-e-Sajan that mentions how the Parsis migrated to Gujarat, basically. When they came in the 10th century, the 8th to 10th century, they came in to avoid persecution. That's the time when Islam just started, the Abbasids basically took over the empire from the Umayyads. Basically, it was 749. The Abbasids take over. They become the rulers of major part of the world, and they drive away all the other religions like they do even today. So they drew out the Parsis from Iran because at that time the whole of Persia was Parsis. They worshipped. They basically threw out these people, and for due to persecution they came to Gujarat. Basically, the king of Gujarat welcomed them, and there's a famous story of I don't know. Most of you might have heard of when the king says that our land is very full. How do I accommodate you? And the Parsi king leader says, get me a bowl of milk. And he puts in sugar, and he tells the king that we are like sugar, we'll mix in your milk. and we'll sweeten your land too. And the king liked that very much, that example. And he gave them land and that's how Parsis settled in Gujarat, basically. Like I said, the Zoroastrians fleeing the repression of the Khajjar dynasty. Khajjar is nothing but the Abbasids, and the general social political turn of the late 19th to the 20th century Iran, basically. They escaped persecution. The symbol of the Auza Masa isn't originally made for him. In fact, there is no symbol made specially for Ahura Mazda. But some arts were found in Peripheros and other ancient Persian sites, which is the Faraval, which is known as the Zoroastrianism. Basically, that sign which I showed you, that exactly is not the sign of Zoroastrians. It's the sign of Ahura Mazda, basically. It's an old sign, but they basically took it and they incorporated on that god of Ahura Mazda, basically. Here I just write some things of the Zoroastrians. Basically, the Zoroastrians worship the sun and the fire as tangible things on earth, so they can concentrate spiritual energy on this. Basically, they are fire worshippers. For them, everything is through fire. There was a person born in 600 to 610, between that time, in Persia, by the name of Zoroaster, basically. He basically took up this religion of Ahura of Assur, and basically he started preaching. Now, I couldn't put in many of the things of how the religion started, because there's a lot of information of how he sees a miracle and all that, and he starts the worship of fire, and today he makes a lot of followers, basically. And in that religion, now this is where you have to really get the importance of how things happened. In Zoroastrianism, the devas were actually demons. Now understand the difference. In Zoroastrians, devas are demons. They are like the Satans, and the Asurs are God, because their god's name is Assur. Remember, Asurs are gods in their religion. Now, this is all in their books, which I will show you later on, going forward. See, the Avesta states that the Gaia, the Greek mother of Mother God. Now, I don't know if you remember in my previous presentations, I showed you a chart where how Noah's children were known with different names, and Noah's wife was known as Mother Earth. I don't know if anyone remember. In Greek, she was known as Gaia, and in India, they call her Gayatri. Mother Earth is also known as Gayatri here in India. So the Avesta says that Gaia, the Mother Earth, spoke to the heavenly god Ahura Mazda to send the prophet to the earth to save it from pain. This is their written in the Avesta. Avesta is their holy book, basically. And God's looking at the request, sends down Ahura Mazda to save the earth, basically. Zoroastrianism was founded in Persia, Azerbaijan, in the bulk Bactria area. Now, this name Bactria today is not called Bactria, but in those times, Bactria was the place which was the happening place. I had also said that Ham escapes to Bactria, and that is where Dionysus goes to kill him. So Bactria is the place which today is called Azerbaijan. So this was the place where basically Zoroastrianism started in the 6th century by the priest Zoroaster, known to the Greeks as Zoroaster, basically. Ahura Mazda, his prayer clashed with Angramanyu. Oh man, every time I have to, it goes, I click it, it goes here. What was it, this page? Okay, it was this page. It was not this, it was here, I think. It was here. Okay, this here I give a brief of Zoroaster. In Greek, what he was called Zarathustra. He died in 583 BC. This is the whole history of what he did. His teaching was also about enlightenment, like the Buddha. He wanted enlightenment. And the god's names were Ahura Mazda, Lord of the Great Wisdom. There were other gods in Zoroastrianism which were known as Mitra. Today he is not worshipped. But today Mitra is not worshipped. Then Varuna is there in the Rig Vedas, and there is Homa. This is very interesting. The moon god Homa, and I'll come to that very later on. The books were during Shapur II and Khusrau I. Many of you might have not heard, but who has learned Persian history know who is Shapur and Khusrau. Khusrau, these people were ruling during 500 to 400, 500 to 600 BC. So these were the kings at that time. Plato, in his Greek author, mentions in his name also about three religions, and the deity Mitra was central to Asian, Persian, Vedic, and Roman religion traditions too. This was the god Mitra. The Avesta is the holy book, like I said, of the Ahura Mazdas, and the chief god who protect humanity from dark forces. Now, Angry Manu is the devil, equivalent to what we call Lucifer in the Bible. The Zoroastrians have Angry Manu. And see the story here, okay? Now, this is from the Avesta. Now you can make your connections of what I'm saying. According to Avesta, the first humans, Mashia and Mashnang, lived in the paradise until they were deceived by Angramanu. Now, Angramanu is the devil. Believing Angramanu's lies, they doubted Ahura Mazda and were expelled from paradise. Condemned to a world of hardship and pain, but their descendants could still live decent lives by staying loyal to Ahura Mazda. Now, folks, I just ask you, where do you connect the story to? This is the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, basically. Okay, there you got your first connection. And that is what I was always saying, that if you go to the base of all religion, you will see that all the base of all religions connect with one story. We are all from one story, but we are all singing a different praise going forward. I'll go to the next slide. Okay, there is one more thing which I want to make on this slide, is that Ahura Mazda, according to the Zoroastrians, they never do an animal sacrifice. They never do, and that's why you see the Zoroastrians never kill any animal, basically. This is one of the Amisha Spenta is basically what we call angels today in our book. We have archangels, angels, we have many other beings which are God created in the Bible. But according to the Zoroastrians, they have two types of, they have the Holy Spirit too. But they call it Spentamanu. We call it the Holy Spirit. They call it the Spentamanu. We have fight and light. We call Jesus the light. They have Asha Vayista. Now these are all masculine. Huh? These are all masculine. This is the difference between Christianity and them, is that for Christians in God's kingdom, there is no male and female. I hope you know. You can read that in Matthew 25. Once our presentation is over, you can pull up Matthew 25 and you'll see clearly where Jesus says, in heaven, angels are not given in marriage because there's no man and woman there. Now, these are the Holy Spirits which they have Spentamanu, Ashavista, and Kastryavarya. They're sky and metal. Then they have the female beings which are called the earth and soil, water, and plants. They also worship these three things. They have something called Homa. Now, how many of you have heard about Soma? Soma, the drink which the Hindus drink. Basically, it comes from Zoroastrians. And I'll tell you the history of what Homa also, how the history came in. It's God's drink of eternity, later incorporated into Brahmanism as Soma. They were the priestly caste. These people were also in the Solomon's court. They were the priestly caste called the Magi. The Magi were the magicians. Basically, the word magic comes from this word, Magi. The word magic from the court of Solomon, who worshipped fire and always kept fire burning. There's also a story that the three wise men who visited Jesus when Jesus was born were the three Magis, the Magi's. These were the three, I'm not saying these ones, but it's probably the three Magais from who were Zoroastrians in that time. That time Zoroastrians was, the religion of Zoroastrians was not formed, but they were basically Magais. Here, Zoroastrians, according to the religion, they have to do 5 prayers. Now, this should light a bulb in your head as to who does 5 prayers and who copied this. According to Zoroastrians, the 5 prayers are actually a period of prayers called Gehez. They are divided into each part of the day. They are the Havan, the sunrise to noon, the Rapiva, noon to midnight, mid-afternoon. Then you have the mid-afternoon to sunset, sunset to midnight, and then you have the Ushayan. Ushayan means midnight to sunrise. If you look, there's a table there. I have shown here. The same thing was copied from the Zoroastrians when the Muslims were writing their books in the 10th, 11th, and 12th century. I always tell Muslims that your books were not old. They were written within the 10th, 11th, 12th century. That's the time they copied these 5 prayers, basically. Even in the Quran, there is only 3 prayers, but they added 2 more because of the Zoroastrians. You see, the Fajr, the Zahur, the As, the Maghrib, and the Insha, as per the Sunni and this. And the Zoroastrians have this, the Havan, the Rapiva, Yuzan, Azvat, and Ushan. These are the 5 prayers which they have to do during the day. This was one copy which they did. The Muslims copied this, the 5 prayers, basically. These are some of the things which they worship, basically. Like I said, the sacred elements are earth, water, air, and fire. They worship the sun, moon, and horses. Horses were worshipped in Zoroastrianism. Some terms in Avesta is Asha, the non-truth. Spendamanu, I said, is the spirit of God. Basically, like we say, the Holy Spirit. That's why they have the Spendamanu. The Angramanu is the bad path. The word angry comes from this, you see. Angramanu. Word angry comes from the Angramanu, and the mantras are the hymns for the priest. Their famous books are the Avesta, and they have 2 more, which is Dankar and Buddhism, but their main is Avesta. The creation story, there is a creation story in the Avesta, like I told you, I read it to you before, where they call their first man as Manu, Mainu, Manu. It closely resembles the Brahmanic Manu, basically. So now you get from where they have copied it. I'll get into those details of how Hinduism actually copied things later on in my next presentation. But I'm just giving you just a brief this of how things were copied from different religions, basically here. This I'm just giving. Herodotus is a historian where he writes about how Zoroastrians will never pollute water. Though in India we have our holy rivers, but they pollute it like hell. You see the state of Ganga and Yamuna. Here Herodotus writes that Persians have a profound reverence for rivers. They will never pollute a river with urine and spilt, basically. So here also I write the Greeks used to worship nature. Now this worshipping nature comes from Greeks to them. Now we are telling about people copying from Zoroastrian. Zoroastrian itself copied a lot of things from the Greeks, like I showed you before Gaia. Gaia was nothing but Mother Earth, and Gaia was known as Noah's wife was known as Gaia. She was known as Mother Earth. So they copied a lot of things from Greeks. Like the theologies in the religion also resemble the theories of Plato and Plotinus, who first preached that the ideas of logos. I don't know if anyone has heard of Plato's idea of logos. That means the God's mind, which in Zoroastrian also means God's mind. Basically, this thing was also taken into Buddhism, and Buddha used to talk about the what do you call the inner mind of yours. And I'll get to this later on too. But this was basically an idea from the Greeks. I would like to go to how they do the worship here in Zoroastrians. And this is where you have to keep an idea as to how things were copied in the Brahmanical system too. And that gives us a clear idea of when the Brahmanic books were actually written. Okay, like the Rig Veda, and the ancient Irans worship gods like Mitra, Vayu, and Ventragana. They also, the Zoroastrians also wore the sacred thread. You know, the Brahmins wear the sacred thread, and they worshipped fire. They had a social classes like how Brahmins had the Shudra, the Kshatriyas. Even the Zoroastrians had social classes between them. And in some way, they were very similar to the Vedic based caste system. However, some gods of the Vedic religion escaped harsh treatment, namely Hama, Varuna, and Mitra. That means they did not take these gods forward in the Brahmanical system. They did not take these gods, but they copied some gods of theirs, like Hama. Hama is the god of death in Zoroastrian religion. But this was copied as Yama, sitting on a buffalo. This god was copied into the Brahmanical system. And later on, it was copied. And like I said, we'll get into details in the next presentation when it comes to Hinduism, how they were. Mitra was a god mentioned in the Rig Veda too. So you understand how their gods were copied. Now, Mitra is not a god which is from Zoroastrians. Mitra is a god coming from also the Greeks. Mitra had a different name. Now, Varuna is the god of the sky. He is also the identically with the Greek god Uranus. This is where I was trying to make a comparison. Many of the Zoroastrian gods, the Hindu gods, some of the Buddhist gods. Now, Buddhists, I can't say gods because in Buddhism there was no god. But some of the devas in Buddhism also were all influenced by Greek mythology. The Greek mythology had a lot of gods, basically. If you see the stories of the clash of the titans, is nothing but the story of Noah's grandchildren fighting with each other. That's called the story of the clash of the titans, basically. And here we have the differences between the two traditions are striking and very similar. The Iranians worship Ahura. The Indians, similar name for the demons. Basically, like I said before, the Zoroastrians and the Iranians, for them, their god is Ashura. But in Brahmanical system, Ashur are the demons, basically. You have read all the comic books where the Ashurs are the demons. They come and kill the Devas. The Devas in Iranian culture were basically the evil spirits. Basically, they turned it upside down. When things were getting copied, everything was turned upside down. Zoroastrians also use the name Rudra. Remember, Rudra is there in the Rig Veda. Many Hindus would say, because Shiva doesn't appear in the Rig Veda, so when you have basically a debate with the Brahmanical person, he would say, "Oh, Shiva is actually Rudra." Rudra is not Shiva. Rudra is basically a Zoroastrian god, and he was also Iranian god. So here you can see how these gods are interchangeable between religions, basically. According to the Zen Avesta, like I said, is a holy book. Indra also appears in the Zoroastrians. Remember, and Brahmanical, he is one of the main Brahmanical gods. Indra and Nautitya were evil spirit who tried to kill Zoroaster. Basically, Indra was the bad guy trying to kill their prophet Zoroaster. And here in the middle, I just mentioned about Iran. Basically, the original name for Iran was Iran, E-R-A-N, the land of the Aryans, basically. Like I had said, and that's why Hitler was very fascinated with the name Aryan, because he knew they were a mixed culture of Shem and Shemites and the Japhites, basically. Here I talk about Homa and Soma. Now, Homa is a drink which is mentioned many times in the Zoroastrian scriptures. Now, let me give you a little brief. In the olden time, like the temple of Diana in Greece and all that, the way to fascinate the people with religion, you had one way only to fascinate people, and that was by tricking them, basically. Because a sober person would never believe the lies of a religious person who would say that God is talking to you. In order for them to believe you, you had to give them intoxicating drinks, basically. Or in the olden times, it was not drinks, they were called like magic mushrooms. I don't know if you have heard of magic mushrooms. These were some of the plants which were ground and given to the devotees. So when they had these drinks, they used to go like how today when you have mandrakes or those drugs, you can hear them saying that I feel I'm flying, I can see I'm floating and all that. Now that is the effect it goes on your brain, and that is how religion was basically, people became mad with religion because of these things which were given to the people so that you don't question the priest that really there is no God. So these drinks were there before. I'm just giving a brief history of how this Homa started. There is a story in the Gilgamesh tablets. Many of you might have heard about the story of the Gilgamesh, the flood tablets, which is there in the British Museum. In that, Gilgamesh, who is actually Nimrod, he seeks Uttanapistam. Noah in the story is called Uttanapistam to learn the secret of external life. He wanted, because Noah lived for 960 years, 960, I presume, because he was the second oldest man on the planet after uh, Melchizedek. I think what his name is, I'm not getting his name, but he was the second oldest. So he goes to him for the eternal life after the death of his friend Enkidu. I'm not getting into details who is Enkidu and all that because you have to understand the story of Gilgamesh, which forces Gilgamesh to confront his own mortality. Gilgamesh wanted to live forever, so he went to Ustamesh and he knew that Utnapistam survived the great flood and he would live forever because Noah lived till a great long time. I think he lived till before Abraham. I wanted to show you one more slide here. Just hold on. I'll just show you one slide. Can you all see this? Is it visible?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. This is the chart we have of the world history. This is where Adam and Eve were born, 4004 BC. Now, many of you will ask, how did you get the exact date? Theologists got a reverse dating. Basically, we all know in the Bible, Adam got his first child at 130 years, Seth got it at so-and-so age, so-and-so, Canaan got it at so-and-so. It is mentioned in the Bible. By counting from reverse, and Bible also mentioned Shem lived for 600 years. So by counting reverse, we can actually get this date, and that's how they got the date 4004. This was calculated by a priest in 1912, I think. I presume 1904 or 1912. Now here you see Adam and Eve. Here, Adam lived till Noah was born. You see here. So that means Adam did give the secrets of Eden to Noah, and Noah did pass on that secrets to Shem. You see here, Noah lives here. So this line is the flood. The flood happens here. Here you see Shem, Ham, and Japheth born to Noah. Shem lives all the years right up to Isaac. And in the Bible, there is a story of Abraham meeting Melchizedek, and Melchizedek blesses Abraham. Many theologians and Jews believe that Melchizedek is Shem because Bible says that Melchizedek had no father and no mother. Basically, he was born like Jesus with no father and mother. But that's not possible. It may be Shem, but I'm also not sure. But you see, Shem lives till Isaac is born, basically. So I just wanted to show this chart just to get you all guys a clear picture, and we'll go back to our slide. Okay. So here, coming back to our story, yeah. Someone saying something? Okay. Noah, who's Uttanapistam, gives Gilgamesh the secret of to survive. That means the secret of life. He gives him a potion to drink, basically, so that he live forever. And the story goes on that he cut some plants and gave him, and he gives it to him. And he said, "This is the secret from the Garden of Eden." But Gilgamesh loses that in a river, and a snake eats it, and then there's a whole big story in that. So what I'm trying to say is the concept of Homa and Soma comes from this old stories, basically. The elixir of life, what you say. The Zoroastrians used to call it Homa, and when the Brahmanism copied it, they made it Soma. Soma is the drink, elixir of life. But remember, the plant which Soma was created, here I write, no one can tell for sure what plant was used for it, and it can totally be extinct. All we know is that the plant was common in the region of Bactria, which is Tajikistan and Eastern Africa, especially in the mountain terrains. This Soma plant doesn't grow in India. So when they today many Brahminical people say, "Oh, the bang is actually Soma," we have no proof that Soma is bang. The Soma rites in Zoroastrians, they had the Homa rites basically, but for them, Homa was also connected to the worship of moon, basically the moon worship, and they used to make what you call yajnas. Here you see yajna. This word also was copied into Brahminical system as yajnas. They used to call it yasna. I'm sorry. In Hinduism, it was called yajna, and they used to call it yasna. Basically, in both, they used to use fire for the sacrificial ceremony for doing the yasna. In the Vedic tradition, had a priest, and Zoroastrian has a Zotar. Zotar is also a priest, basically. Both traditions had the same element like water and Vayu. During the yagna, they will use water and Vayu. And some of the things which I wanted to give you is, yeah, like I said, Mitra is associated with Homa rites, just as the moon, Soma. And Indra gives company to Soma. What I'm trying to just convey here is how these things were copied in other religions and what was the rites in Zoroastrianism, basically. Now, this is as per the Zoroastrians, like I was told you the story of the temple of Diana. They have a book called the Mitra Yast. It's another holy book of theirs. And in that, it very clearly mentions, as per scriptures in Zoroastrians, you take Homa regularly. Otherwise, you will not believe in God. The whole religion is based on it. You wouldn't have religion without Homa. Now you're getting the connection. That means until I drug you and tell you the story, you will not believe in it. That means you have to keep having this Homa. Homa and Soma is nothing but that drink. They say even the Messiah provided everyone Homa at the time to perfect their souls. This is written in the book, this one. There is a scripture that clarifies that many Homas are there. There are many types of these drinks. That means you can get it from magic mushrooms, you can get it from plants, you can. I'm taking that is clarifying with the word that there are many Homas. The reason it being psychedelic, like I said, there are psychedelic mushrooms are there. It gives you a psychedelic effect. Basically, you go into a trance. When you go into a trance, you start believing in things. You start seeing people. You start seeing spirits. You start things which your mind starts creating. That's how basically a lot of religions also used to spread with this type of magic drinks and allows you to reach the spiritual world. Basically, you cannot reach the spiritual world until you have some sort of hallucinated drink or something like that. This type of demonic worship used to be done in the Greek Diana temples. Remember the Diana temples, the priestess were priestess. They were all women. There were two ways they used to attract people. One is through prostitution, and the other was through these drinks, basically in the temple of Diana. Now, this is the yasna which they do. It's also called a havanga. And you look at this picture, I just wanted to give you a picture. Everything is very similar to what Brahminical puja is being done. The things which they use in it for the ghee, the thing for putting the ghee, the sticks, the dress what you wear, the priest has to wear a certain dress. The Zator is actually basically the priest here. Here I write, the derived from the Western root yasna. The ancient commentary translates to as Vatan. Many prayers in the yasna are repetitive. Like if you have attended any Brahmanical, what do you call this, yagna, you will hear that the mantras are repeated and repeated and repeated. Doesn't make sense. The same mantras are just repeated. The same way here, many prayers in the yasna are repetitive or similar. For instance, the first seven has are the basically paragraphs have many repeated passages. They keep repeating the same prayers again and again and again. They're not telling multiple prayers basically. They're saying the same thing again. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. The prayers what they're saying. Yasna can be done for the soul or living or for a departed person, basically. Now, this is one chapter which is there in Zoroastrian, and this is the name which I gave it. I said the bridge on the river Hell. Basically, this is a picturization of hell long before the Bible was written, and I should be very open to say that the concept of hell in Christianity, what you call the Gehenna, in the Bible we call it Gehenna, and we use another word, I don't have it now. Basically, I get a feeling, this is my personal feeling, that they have copied these stories from the Sumerians. Now, the first tablet you have here is a Sumerian story of Inanna. Basically, that is Inanna, what you call Istar, and what you call, she's also the goddess for which we say Easter, basically the star, and she goes down to hell to basically rescue her son Tamar. And I said this in my previous presentation too, Tammuz, how Semiramis goes down. She's also called Semiramis in our. And this is basically 2300 BC. This is the tablets which are, I think this is in the Egyptian museum, this tablet. Below is a painting of Enoch, what is the third person, third or fourth person after Adam. Enoch is the only person in the Bible, second person in the Bible who has not died after Ezekiel, Elijah. Elijah and Enoch has not died as per the Bible because Enoch was taken to heaven. And now there is a story in the book of Enoch which is banned in the Bible, where Enoch is taken for a tour of heaven and hell by the angels to show him the glory in heaven and hell. And basically, this is a story where Enoch goes down to hell and he sees the burning hell, the fire, and all that. Today, which we have the description of hell, which is in the book Dante's. There's a book called Dante's Fire or something like that. That concept is basically taken from the book of Enoch. And on the right side, we have a picturization of how the Zoroastrians see hell, basically. There is a bridge between a river, and there is two dogs which are protecting this bridge. And I go to the next slide. Okay. Okay, I'll get to the story. I think my slides have got messed up. Here I say Enoch's journey to heaven and hell. Basically, I don't know, there are some of the names of the fallen angels here. Samsara was their leader. And the Lord said into Michael, go bind Samsara and the associates who have united them in woman. That is the fallen angels, which I said before. And God basically here is saying to punish Samsara and the 200 angels which came from the Mount Hermon, basically and mated with the woman, the daughters of man. God tells them to bind them in the earth and put them for 10,000 years in the prison till the judgment day. That is what God is instructing Michael to do, basically. This famous story is also there in Homer, the Greek writer Homer's book Odyssey, book 11. He mentions this incident in his book Odyssey, basically. The same story is copied in Islam. It's called the Miraj as a night journey, where basically Muhammad goes on a animal which is half man, half horse or a donkey. I don't know what it is. But this is a story which is cooked up by them through this story. Same story, where he goes from Makkah, which is in Saudi Arabia, using this flying horse. He goes to Medina. From Medina, he goes to Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is in Egypt here. He he flies to Mount Sinai. From there, he goes to Jerusalem, and from there the Al Masjid Al Aqsa mosque. From there, he goes to heaven, basically. And there's a lot of stories which I don't want to get into it. How Muhammad meets Moses, and that is where he gets the 5 prayers. Now, let me say, not getting into the story of this, we can get that into when we come to that subject of Islam. But right now, if you see the mosque Al Aqsa was not built till about 690 AD. AD. Muhammad dies in 632. So there was no way he could go through Aqsa Mosque. And in the Quran, it is not even written Aqsa Mosque, it is written the furthest mosque. So this is a cock and bull story, basically. Okay, coming to that bridge, I messed up this slide. This slide should have been there. That bridge in Zoroastrianism is called the Chingar Bridge. It is between hell and earth. The soul, the dead man's soul, will meet the holy maiden called Dana. According to them, it's called Dana, but Diana is the Greek goddess, basically. This is where I said even they were stealing gods. In the olden time, everyone was stealing each other's gods. Now, Diana meets the dead soul on the bridge. Basically, she appears as a beautiful maiden. To the wicked, she would look like an ugly old hag, basically. And she would take the soul across the bridge. And if the person is a wicked person, the bridge will grow more and more narrow as you grow across the bridge. This is all mentioned in their books, basically. And how the writers will be taken into the other side, into heaven, just like we have it. And the Ashuras, the gods, the good people are the Ashuras, and the bad, evil are the Devas, basically. Now, everything is mentioned in the book called the Ardha. This is where they have the Islam, more probably Islam has copied it from Ardha, basically, the Miraj, they call it the Miraj, the night journey, basically. There is a lot of similarities in this. First, both travelers were introduced as chosen person and prophets in the holy text. Muhammad, like Ardha, goes on to a night journey, both physical and spiritual, on the back of a white-winged beast-like horse called the Burak, to heaven. His journey to heaven is called Miraj, which means ascending. Muhammad is accompanied by Archangel Gabriel, while Ardha has 2 companions, Sarosha and Sorosh, the other the angels. Remember, Zoroastrians have angels in their religion too, just like we have. In the Islam, Muhammad meets Adam, Abraham, Noah, Moses, and Jesus on his journey. However, Zoroastrian messenger never meets Zoroaster. They don't talk anything about they meeting their prophets, basically. In both the divine version, the visitors narrated the vision of heaven and hell to confirm the common belief in afterlife. The Islamic account of the night journey, nearly 400 years after Ardha was praised lavishly in the literature. Basically, it's telling is written almost 400 years after it was written. So you can know who copied who. Now, this is one statement which I was wanting to make in the Banyan Wines. Just a comparison before I close. According to the holy scriptures of this, Lord Brahma, basically, here what I'm saying is that most of the gods have died. Like Brahma is said to have symbolically severed one of Brahma's heads in an act of punishment. That means Brahma dies by Lord Shiva itself killing Brahma. This is from their books. Shiva is defeated and killed in stories like the one involving the demon Bhamasura while fleeing and seeking refuge with the Lord Vishnu. Kali is also shown to have killed Shiva with him at his feet. Krishna's death was caused by earthly form in the foot by a hunter named Java. Krishna also dies. Rama is also believed to have drowned in the Sarayu river. This is there in the Ramayana. Muhammad, Zoroaster all died. Only Jesus is the only God in the whole history of this religion who's still alive in heaven. Rest of all the gods today practicing, all have died. Only Jesus is still alive in heaven. Muhammad said, I do not know what shall befall you tomorrow, nor what shall befall me. He did not know anything about himself after he dies, he said. Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to me, to the Father, except through me. Buddha said, I'm looking for enlightenment. Jesus said, I am the enlightenment. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. My conclusions here are that we humans, all the gods on this planet and humans are descendants and stories of Noah and his sons. Even Jesus comes from the line of Shem. Jesus also did not just fall on this planet. God made a plan for him. God brought him through the line of Shem. In this chapter, the son of Shem, Assur, preached the same concept of Noah, one God. But this was changed when stories kept moving from mouth to mouth, like the Chinese whisper, like I always say. Basically, Assur also was talking of the same God, the one God. Thus, my title, Banyan Vines, we are all branches of the same tree. And this is just some references of what I have taken. There is a book called The Linguistic Comparison of Old Avestan Gathas with the Rig Veda by Mary Boyce. There's another book called When Zoroaster Spoke by Mary Stelgate. She wrote it in 1934. The Book of Enoch, I took something from there. The Ethiopian Bible, the Avesta, and the Ardhaviraf. This is the Ardhaviraf, which I was talking the same as the other thing. I write here that the night journey in the Quran was a copy from these stories. The Ardhaviraf might have been taken from the Book of Enoch or the Sumerian story of Inanna, and then it was copied in the Quran in the late 10th to the 16th century. And that's my end of my presentation of Zoroaster. I was just trying to bring a comparison, connecting all the dots for my theme of my main subject of Noah and his sons as gods in today's world. Basically, everywhere you go, there is some connection in every religion to the story of Noah. Like I said before, there are 250 stories of the flood throughout the world. Everyone calls Noah and his children with different names, but the stories are the same. It all connects to one root. And that is the name of my book, which I will be writing, which is The Banyan Tree. We are all the branches, all from the same root. Okay, that's it. And anyone has anything, guys?
But
No, Vlad, you can stop recording.
Okay. Yeah, stop recording. So
Yeah.
Ardhaviraf is from the Zoroastrian